Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking a close look at conscious capitalism.
Right. This idea that business can actually be a force for good, going beyond just, the bottom line.
Exactly. And you sent over some really interesting material on this. Our aim here is basically to pull out the key stuff for you,
Yeah.
make it easy to grasp, but still, pretty thorough.
Yeah, absolutely. You want the solid insights without getting bogged down in jargon. And we'll explore how this philosophy views business as, well, a creator of immense value. Some even say it's potentially heroic.
Heroic, yeah. And there's a strong case for that value creation, isn't there? I mean, think about it. Maybe 200 years back, something like 85% of the world lived on less than $1 a day.
Mm-hmm.
And today,
Yeah.
largely driven by capitalism, that's down to around 16%.
Oh,
That's huge.
it's a massive shift, yeah. Really highlights what well-functioning markets can achieve. But, as the materials point out, business and capitalism often get a bad rap.
Right. Misunderstood, sometimes maligned. You hear the narratives about greed, exploitation.
Exactly, which is why diving into conscious capitalism feels important right now. It offers a different lens.
So our mission today is to really get under the skin of its core principles. Understand how businesses might operate with this idea of a higher purpose, considering everyone involved, not just shareholders.
Okay, so to get a proper handle on it, let's break down the main pillars. Conscious capitalism lays out 4 key tenets.
All right, let's jump into number 1, higher purpose.
Okay.
Now, this isn't saying profit is bad or unimportant. Obviously, businesses need to make money.
Sure, got to keep the lights on.
Right. But higher purpose asks, what's the deeper why? What's the reason for being, beyond just generating profit? Profit becomes like a result or a fuel for that bigger purpose.
And what's fascinating is how different these purposes can be. The examples in our sources are really diverse.
There really are. Take Whole Foods Market. They don't just have one purpose. They have several kind of interconnected ones.
Like what?
Well, things like nourishing people and the planet, improving health, helping end poverty, and even promoting conscious capitalism itself.
That's quite a few. It makes you wonder how they balance all that. Are there trade-offs sometimes, like between keeping things affordable and, say, pushing environmental goals?
That's a really good point. It highlights the complexities, even with good intentions. But other companies have different angles. Hyatt, for example, their purpose is simple. Care for people so they can be their best. Very human-focused.
Yeah, concise. Then you've got JBN Consulting. Help clients and colleagues pursue their greatest potential, make a meaningful difference, and enjoy the journey.
So it's about impact and the experience.
And IGS Energy focuses on creating a meaningful energy future together, sustainability, collaboration.
First United Bank wants to inspire and empower others to spend life wisely. We'll actually come back to how they measure that later.
Oh, interesting. And WD-40 Company, you wouldn't maybe expect this. Their purpose is to create positive, lasting memories in everything they do. Huh. Makes you think beyond just, fixing a squeaky hinge. Maybe it's that little moment of satisfaction.
Yeah, that little win. Then Mars Pet Care. A better world for pets. Pretty clear. The Motley Fool. To make the world smarter, happier, and richer. Ambitious.
Very. And DTE Energy, leading the way to a cleaner, safer, and smarter energy future. Again, focused on progress in their sector.
So looking at all these examples, what really jumps out?
Well, a couple of things. First, the sheer variety. Purpose isn't just for one type of company. Second, how they arrive at this purpose. It's usually not just the CEO deciding.
Right. It involves talking to people, doesn't it?
Yeah, bringing stakeholders together, employees, customers, investors, suppliers. It has to feel authentic, something everyone can sort of buy into.
And it seems this isn't just like a nice mission statement plaque on the wall. It actually has tangible benefits.
Looks like it. The sources mention some compelling data. Gallup, for instance, found employee engagement way higher, like 90% in purpose-driven companies.
Wow, 90% compared to what?
Compared to about 32% elsewhere. So a massive difference, presumably because people feel connected to something bigger than just their tasks.
Makes sense. You feel like your work matters more. And there was another study.
Yeah, Korn Ferry Institute. They found purpose-focused companies grew almost 3 times faster annually than others in their industries.
3 times faster. Now, correlation isn't causation, but still,
Yeah.
that suggests a strong link. Maybe better focus, maybe more loyal customers.
Could be a mix of things, and this really leads nicely into the second tenet. Stakeholder orientation.
Okay, so if you have a higher purpose beyond just profit,
then logically you need to think about everyone who has a stake in the company, not just the shareholders.
Right. So who we're talking about when we say stakeholders?
Typically it's employees, customers, suppliers, investors, yeah, but also society more broadly and the environment. The idea is to create value for all of them, finding those win-win-win situations.
It feels like the conversation around business responsibility has shifted a bit, hasn't it? Like that 2019 Business Roundtable statement.
That was a big moment, yeah. Lots of major CEOs acknowledging commitments beyond just shareholders. It signaled a broader shift in thinking, or at least in rhetoric.
So how does this stakeholder focus look in practice? Any examples?
Oh, yeah. Vital Farms is a good one.
Uh.
They explicitly put farmers and even the animals on their stakeholder map.
The animals?
Yep. They talk about listening with empathy to understand everyone's needs, including the hens producing the eggs.
That definitely broadens the definition.
It does. Then there's Grayston Bakery. They have this open hiring policy. Basically, they hire the next person who walks in looking for a job. No interviews, no background checks initially.
Really? How does that work?
Well, it directly tackles barriers to employment in their community. It aligns their staffing needs with a real social impact goal. It's quite radical, but it works for them.
That's a powerful connection to the community stakeholder.
Exactly. And Fresh Pet, the pet food company, they build the costs of doing the right thing by all their stakeholders right into their business model. And they're upfront about this with their long-term investors.
So they're saying, look, this is part of how we operate, and it's sustainable.
Precisely. It shows that prioritizing stakeholders doesn't have to mean sacrificing financial health. It can be part of the strategy.
Okay, that makes sense. So purpose, stakeholders. What's the third tenet?
Conscious leadership.
All right. So what makes a leader conscious in this context?
Well, these are leaders who really get the higher purpose. They live it, they champion it, and their main job is seen as creating value for all those stakeholders we just talked about and building that conscious culture we'll get to next.
Sounds like it requires a pretty specific kind of person.
Yeah.
Certain qualities.
Absolutely. The sources list quite a few. Things like stewardship, feeling responsible for the whole system, a real focus on developing their people.
Building the team.
Yeah, because they know the business relies on them. They also actively seek out diversity of thought. They're curious. They listen more than they talk.
Humility comes up too, right? And awareness.
Humility, self-awareness, empathy, really trying to understand others' perspectives. Plus, the energy and enthusiasm to inspire people. A long-term view, flexibility.
It's quite a list. Love and care are even mentioned. And different kinds of intelligence.
Yeah, emotional intelligence, systems thinking, and even what they call spiritual intelligence, which isn't necessarily religious, but more about being deeply connected to the company's values and ethics, acting with integrity.
Can you point to some leaders who embody this?
Sure. The material mentions Kip Tindell from the Container Store. His focus was on building people who build the business. Dr. Kimberly Townsend at Loretto, cited for selfless leadership. Stephen Shaw at PayActive. Tony Portman at Workplace.
Sid Marshall at the Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah, leading with integrity, connecting to purpose. Shane Jackson at Jackson Healthcare, emphasizing empathy, empowering his experts. Melanie DeBecco at Terriani, who really embraced learning during tough growth periods.
So it's less about just command and control, more about inspiring and enabling.
Exactly. Like John Mackey from Whole Foods said, it's about making a positive difference, mobilizing energy around that shared mission. Which brings us neatly to the fourth tenet, conscious culture.
Okay, so if leadership sets the tone.
Culture is the atmosphere. It's the how things are done around here, the values, the principles, the everyday interactions. It's what connects everyone, stakeholders, employees to each other and back to that higher purpose.
And you can't just hope this happens, right? It needs deliberate effort.
Absolutely. You have to intentionally cultivate it, build an environment that reinforces the values, where people feel safe, trusted, and able to be themselves.
What are the key ingredients of this kind of culture?
Things like trust, huge one. Accountability, genuine caring for people, transparency, integrity, loyalty, often flatter, more egalitarian structures too.
Sounds like a great place to work, honestly. Does it actually impact the business, though?
Seems so.
Yeah.
There's a Banning Company study mentioned where 70% of leaders said culture was their biggest competitive advantage.
70%, that's significant.
It really is. It suggests this isn't just soft stuff. It drives performance.
Got any examples of companies with strong, conscious cultures?
Banfield Pet Hospital is one. During the pandemic, they made very intentional shifts to support their team's psychological safety, boost learning, empower women, And they did this while still growing profitably.
Wow. So culture helped them navigate a crisis.
Looks like it. Another one is Scribe Media. They actually published their culture Bible online.
Their internal rules. Online.
Yeah, outlining how they operate. Things like giving thoughtful feedback, fewer meetings, focusing on the best idea, not just who said it, encouraging questions. Very transparent.
That takes confidence.
It does. And Envision IT credits their culture focused on long-term joy, safety, learning, mindful communication for achieving 100% employee engagement, and really high customer satisfaction.
Okay, so we've covered the 4 tenets, but the sources also make a point of saying what conscious capitalism isn't. That seems useful.
Yeah, helps clear up misconceptions. First off, it's not about sacrificing profit.
Right, we said that earlier.
The idea is that purpose and profit actually fuel each other. A strong purpose can lead to better financial results long-term through innovation, loyalty, engagement, and so on.
It's not an either-or.
Definitely not. Second, it's not about apologizing for being a business. It sees business done right as fundamentally good. Ethical, noble, even heroic, as we touched on. It creates value.
So a positive view of commerce.
A very positive one. Third, it's not just a checklist. You can't just, donate to charity and call yourself conscious.
It has to be deeper than that.
Much deeper. It's a core strategy woven into the company's DNA. And finally, it's presented as apolitical, a unifying idea, not tied to left or right.
Okay, and there's a CEO summit mentioned. What's that about?
Yeah, the Conscious Capitalism CEO Summit. It's basically a gathering place. Leaders committed to these ideas get together, share what's working, what's not, learn from each other, build a community.
Like a peer support network for conscious leaders?
Sort of, yeah, sharing best practices in an open way.
Okay, so we have purpose, stakeholders, leadership, culture. But how do you know if you're actually achieving your purpose? Beyond just profit, I mean. This brings us to KPIs, right? But not just key performance indicators.
Exactly. Key purpose indicators, still KPIs, but focused on the purpose part.
Okay, explain that.
Well, just like you track sales or costs with traditional KPIs, key purpose indicators track how well you're living up to your higher purpose. There's that analogy.
The red blood cells one?
Yeah. Humans need red blood cells, like businesses need profit to live. But the purpose of life isn't just making red blood cells.
Got it. Profit is essential, but it's not the ultimate point of the business in this model.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So these purpose KPIs measure progress towards that ultimate point.
Makes sense. Do we have examples of companies actually using these?
Oh, yeah, quite a few.
Sure.
Southwest Airlines, their purpose is about the freedom to fly. So they track things like how many markets they're in and the Southwest effect, how fares drop when they enter a route.
So measuring how much they're making flying accessible.
Exactly. Walmart's purpose is save money and live better. They literally track how much customers agree with that statement.
Through surveys and stuff.
Yeah. IKEA, aiming for a better everyday life for the many, uses an affordability index comparing their prices, plus lots of sustainability metrics.
Checking if they're affordable and sustainable.
Right. Starbucks tracks employee development, fairness for coffee farmers, community investment.
All linked to their nurturing the human spirit idea.
Mm-hmm. And Patagonia, with their mission to save our home planet, they track money invested in activism, land preserved, lawsuits supported, even customer engagement in campaigns. Very concrete metrics.
Those are really specific and tied directly to the mission.
And then there's First United Bank again. Remember their purpose. Inspire and empower others to spend life wisely.
Yeah, how do they measure that?
They developed this whole Spend Life Wisely index. It's pretty sophisticated. It looks at 4 areas: financial well-being, faith, sort of meaning purpose, health, and personal growth.
Wow, how do they get data on all that?
Yeah.
Faith, personal growth.
Through detailed surveys, mostly. They ask about feelings, but also about concrete behaviors and known factors contributing to well-being in each area.
Like what, for example?
Okay, so for financial well-being, maybe debt-to-income ratio, retirement savings. For health, maybe chronic conditions, sleep quality, exercise. Personal growth could be feeling, your purpose, taking learning opportunities. Faith might be community involvement, time for reflection.
That is incredibly thorough, trying to quantify well-being across the board.
It really is. And the learnings they get are huge. They understand stakeholder needs better, they can tailor what they offer, and crucially, they can show the impact their purpose-driven approach is having.
And the board is on board with this.
Very much so, according to the sources. They're strong champions of the purpose and these indicators. It underlines that quote from Grant Reed.
That purpose and performance go hand in hand.
Exactly. So if a company wants to develop these, the advice is get a team involved. Ask what would show we're making progress on our purpose. Think about what stakeholders would expect you to track.
And start simple, maybe. Don't try to measure everything at once.
Yeah, start simple, involve the board. These indicators are key for credibility, right? To show you're not just purpose washing.
Makes sense. Avoid just talking the talk.
Right. Show the walk.
Well, this has been really illuminating, a proper deep dive into conscious capitalism. It's definitely more than just a buzzword. It feels like a practical framework.
Absolutely. It's about building businesses that create value in a much broader sense, contributing positively.
And hopefully, this conversation has given everyone listening a good, solid grasp of the core ideas without being overwhelming.
Yeah, understanding this potential for business to be a force for good, that's a valuable takeaway in itself, isn't it?
It really is. It makes you look differently at the companies you interact with every day. Ask, what is their purpose? How are they treating all their stakeholders?
Mm-hmm. So maybe a final thought to leave people with. What if these ideas really took hold more widely?
You mean if more businesses adopted conscious capitalism principles?
Yeah. How might that reshape things? Our economy, our society? Moving beyond just GDP or profit to measure success, thinking more about human well-being, environmental health.
That's a big question. Definitely something to chew on.
It is. And if folks want to learn more, the Conscious Capitalism Inc. website has tons of resources. It's worth exploring and thinking about, what role purpose plays in your view of business.